Hey friends, in today's video I'll tell you 6 multi-million krona first-time home buyer mistakes. If you're planning to buy a house or planning to buy an apartment in Denmark, these are 6 must-knows that will save you money, will save you time, and will give you peace of mind. 1. Don't fall for the square meter lie. In Denmark, apartments are advertised as being bigger than they are in reality. Because this number that you see, so when you see the size of a specific apartment being like 100 square meters or 80 square meters and so on, that you see in Baltic Sea or you see in the brochures and so on, this number in reality is of course what's inside the apartment and what is inside the walls of the apartment, but also includes corridors, basements, common areas, and a lot of other different things which are at the end of the day not your apartment. So just keep in mind that when you again look into the specific apartment, the size that you see advertised is not the real size. I can give you a concrete example here. My apartment is 113 square meters, according to this measurement, right? And then when I went to look for my apartment, I was looking for different apartments within the same building. And on the other side of the building, there was a flat, and it was exactly the same layout. They're basically taking exactly the same. There was nothing different. And it was advertised itself at 113. It was advertised as 125. I was like, what's going on? How is it possible that exactly the same as like 10 square meters more? What are those 10 square meters? And the real estate guy basically explained it like, no, of course, like this specific flat is, yeah, they're the same layout, but this one has more corridor, has more common areas, and because of that, it's advertised as being bigger. It turns out that in Denmark, there are 2 ways to measure the size of a flat. First one is Bolig Areal, BBR, and that's basically the one we have been just mentioning until now, which includes the corridors, includes common areas, and so on, and it's an inflated number. It's not the real size of the apartment. And then there's something called Tinglust Areal, which is what is exactly within the walls of the apartment, including the balcony. And that's basically at the end of the day, what you really care, because at the end of the day, like, I don't care about 10 more square meters here and there. I just want to know what's inside the apartment. And the way you can see this real number is when you download the Sales of Stealings, and there's a link down over here when I explain this document. This is when you actually see what is the real size of the apartment. And it turns out that, for example, my apartment and that one with 125 square meters, at the end of the day, both in reality were 102 square meters, exactly the same. One key note here is that these extra square meters, so this going from 113 to 125 in that example, they're absolutely useless square meters, because again, it's not that you can send your friend to sleep in the corridor, or you can like set up an extra studio or something in the basement. It doesn't really work like that in most buildings. Again, it's completely useless in terms of practical need. And then on the flip side, because your apartment is bigger in paper, you actually need to pay more in property taxes by having this bigger apartment. So again, exactly the same apartments, myself and this one over there that had the 125, that apartment had to pay between 500 and 800 krona more just per month on taxes than mine. And it's like insane for, again, who cares about the corridors? Something critical to keep in mind when you look at the size of the apartments, make sure that you know both and don't get fooled by the first impressions. 2. Use a real estate lawyer. In my opinion, the most stupid thing you can ever do is to go and buy something for 4, 5, 6 million Danish krona and not be willing to pay 10,000 for having a lawyer having your back the whole time. I think it's borderline insanity if you are willing to go, like, again, naked without the lawyer. Again, you're going to be making, what I always say, the biggest purchase of your life. And if you're going to be doing that, make sure you have someone that's an expert helping you all along the way. And a real estate lawyer goes beyond just watching my YouTube videos or reading my guide. I mean, you just really want someone who's an expert, who can explain you all the details, who can advise you in for your own specific case, making sure that whatever you're going to be buying is a good deal or not, making sure that all the paperwork is good. And this is even more important if you're a foreigner. If you're a Dane, you know, you might be scrapping by understanding some of the rules and regulations. But if you're a foreigner and you need to get all this information from the I-Foreignings and so on, they're all in Danish and you don't understand, it just pays well so much to just have a lawyer go through all that. In my opinion, it's a godsend. And as well, you can also use your lawyer for preparing and planning for the negotiations, for sparring, you name it. It's absolutely money worth spent. And I think like the most common serious mistake I see from people writing me is like, oh, they get problems. I mean, like they just moved and after they got problems with the bank, or they get problems with the house itself and they don't know what to do and they didn't have a lawyer. I'm like, man, insane, or honestly, really. So make sure you go with a lawyer. And as a side note, don't even be a penny pincher on the lawyer. Again, just if a good lawyer asks you for 10,000, don't try to negotiate down to 6,000 or 7,000. Again, at the end of the day, like, it's not really worth it. Yes, you can find a cheaper lawyer, but again, make sure you get one that will give you the best possible service. Because if the lawyer helps you negotiate the price down of your apartment by like 10,000 or 13,000, they make more of that money worth it. And if you need a specific lawyer recommendation, I list down my lawyer in the video description. It's the same guy I have used when I bought my own apartment. Totally recommended. 3. Bid for multiple properties. And this is a code for just don't be married with just one specific flat or house. In Denmark, in Copenhagen, or anywhere you are living, there are multiple houses, there are multiple apartments, there are thousands of apartments for sale, there are thousands of houses for sale at the moment as well. If you're obsessed with just one, you will be getting a bad deal. The reality is that it's a lot better to be like in 3, 4, 5 different properties and not just be borderline crazy with just one. This is especially important in 2021 as it's a market now where there's not that many houses for sale, not that many apartments for sale relative to what it was a few years ago. So in case you're looking for the type of perfect flat, maybe it's better to just wait it out and look for more options instead of just being again obsessed with just what looks good at the moment, just right here, right now. Once you find multiple properties that you like and you will potentially bid, you can bid them against each other. And the way you do this is that, for example, you get property A, which is your favorite property, you make a bid, and you tell the seller that, okay, your offer for whatever worth only for 1 or 2 days. You can have your lawyer helping with this, but the idea is that, okay, if you don't get an answer by this date, yes or no, the offer is void. And then they might come back with you with a counter offer, but in the meantime, you can say, okay, the counter offer is this, and then you can make an offer to another apartment, and then the same. 1 or 2 days maximum, they need to give a reply. Sometimes you might give them more time, less time, you need to check how you go in the negotiation, and there's a negotiation video over here. But the idea is that by having multiple bids at the same time, you can help push the prices down. And now that the market is cooling, you might get an option again to negotiate a little bit more instead of just having to pay overprice. 4, get the bank loans approved beforehand. Just imagine this situation. You all of a sudden find the perfect apartment. And you're like, okay, this is my price range, this is a good area, I can potentially negotiate down, let's go. And you want to go through this, but you don't have the bank loan pre-approved. If you then approach the bank and you basically like in a time limit because there are multiple people potentially bidding for the same apartment and you want to go fast, the banks will be like sharks. They will smell blood and will try to squeeze you as much as possible. Which means in practice, will you be able to negotiate the bank loan interest? Yeah, probably not too much. Will you be able to negotiate the conditions, other conditions with the bank like gold card or whatever? Probably not so much. Will you be able to get the best loans, the cheapest F1 without repayments and like no interest or whatever, like you name it? Will you be able to get that? Maybe not, because again, the way you get these best deals with the banks is when you talk with multiple banks, basically all the banks, and then get the best deal possible out of all of them. And if you're in time limit, you might not be able to talk with 5, 6, 7 different banks or 7 different people within different banks. Yes, you could, but you will be a bit under pressure and a bit more tight instead of just if you plan ahead and do this in advance. My recommendation is that before you even start looking for a place seriously, make sure you get those bank pre-approvals beforehand, that you know exactly which loan you want to go for and make sure that the bank signs them off. In my case, I wanted to make sure that I could go for this F3, F5 if I wanted, so meaning that it was not like this fixed 30 years, but it was a bit shorter time frame. And it was absolutely critical for me that the bank loan that only pay interest, so the interest only loan, would be approved. I just was absolutely certain that if I don't get that, I'm not going to be looking for a place. And I just went through the banks, and some banks said no, but eventually I got my package. And then when I found the apartment that I liked, which is this one over here, I would just go and bid, knowing full well that I got the banks back for not only the price, which of course is important, but all the conditions that would be behind that. And this is important for you as well. 5, don't think you'll get negative interest rates. If you look into the news, it all appears that we are getting negative interest rates in Denmark and in some places in Europe, which means that if you get a mortgage, you'll get paid to have a mortgage. And though that has a semblance of truth, you actually get negative interest rates on your bonds, the reality is that at the end of the day, you will always still have to pay for a mortgage. And that's because there's something called vouchers, which is something that is not very advertised by the banks, but the reality is that if you get a loan from the bank for example, 0 to 80% of the value of the apartment, which is what most people do, you'll have to pay what's around 1% on top of whatever interest rate you're aligned with the bank. So if you think you're fixing your interest rate for 30 years at 1.5%, in effect, what you'll be paying each year, if you include this vouchers fee on top of it, will be around 2.5. Again, it depends on what type of loans you get and so on, but by and large, yeah, it's around 1%. And that's again a lot of money, right? And even if you get the cheapest loans, so the loans that are the most short term, that they have again these low or negative interest rates, those loans also have vouchers, and it's actually even higher vouchers on top of it, that in effect make it so that you'll never be paying less than like between 0.5 and 1% per year in interest to the bank itself, again on fees or whatever. If this sounds complicated, it's because it is complicated. And to help you on this and to help you navigate this world of negative interest rates and vouchers and fees and understanding the mortgage system, which is very confusing, I made a 7-page detailed report. There's a link down in the video description, you can buy that, and again it will help you illuminate you on how to understand again this market and see exactly how much you'll be paying when you actually get a loan from the banks. 6, don't be desperate. Rent is expensive. I know that a lot of you think that, oh, I'm throwing money to the garbage when I'm paying rent and I'm not building my own assets, la la la. The reality is that, yeah, you're right on that, but at the same time, if you're buying a house, you need to make sure that whatever you buy is good, because the transaction cost of buying and selling a house are a lot higher than what would be like a few months rent. Just keep that in mind. So specifically, in practice, what it means is that if you have not found the right flat or house right here, right now, or even in 2 months' time, make sure you take your time and keep looking, because I mean, it's a lot worse to buy something that you might not be fully 100% on board than just waiting a few more months until the right apartment pops up. In my case, it took me between 9 and 10 months to say, okay, this is the flat I want to go for, and then fully bid and just go all in. During those 10 months, yeah, I looked for a lot of places. I went to watching here, watch a lot of apartments there, but it was never that something that would be like, okay, this clicks. And then when I found my current flat, it's like, okay, this is it, let's go. And again, I had multiple options, but it was like, okay, it was a lot of similar options in the same area, was like kind of narrowed down. And the reality is that if you don't have this mentality of just waiting it out, you might have gotten a bad deal. So these are the top 6. For number 7 and number 8, you should check the video over here where I explain 2 of the most important regulations that you should know as a foreigner when it comes to buying a house in them. Things that if you are not aware of, you can get into a lot of trouble. So it's super important you go through that video as well as a follow-up to this one. With that, thank you for making it all the way to the end. Thank you for the support. Make sure you subscribe below if you haven't so done yet, and all the best.